Hello everyone, and welcome to my lecture about media literacy. My name is Nenad Miladinovic and I am an EFL teacher. I work in the primary school Treći bataljon here in Kragujevac, Serbia. And today I want to share something about media literacy, about various types of media generally speaking. I would like to talk about media landscape, about some types of media content, and eventually the last topic will be news selection. I hope you will enjoy this lecture together with me today. Welcome again. And let's start with our story. So, first question that we need to answer is, what is media? Well, media has become an important part of our everyday lives and can be found everywhere from radio to social media. Before we can talk about media literacy, we must first understand the concept of media. And let's try to answer three key questions. What is media? Where do we see or hear media messages? And how often do we see or hear media messages? Let's start. What is media? Well, media is the different channels or ways in which news, entertainment, marketing messages, or other information is spread. There are many different types of media. The oldest type is print media, and this includes newspapers, magazines, and billboards. As technology developed, so did the different types of media. Common types of media moved from radio to television to the internet. And today, millions of people use social media such as Facebook and Twitter to spread their ideas and messages. Mass media is media that reaches a large number of people. Mass media includes both traditional and social media. An example would be if you watch the news on television and many other people might also be watching that same news program, so this is mass media. And now on to our second and third questions. Where and how often do we see or hear media messages? To answer these questions, let's look at an example. So the question is, how often do we see or hear media messages? Let's meet Peter. No? Okay. Peter wakes up every morning at 7 a.m. As he gets ready for the day, he turns onto the TV and he watches the morning news. As he drives to work, Peter listens to a radio show which discusses what's new in sports and entertainment. Peter sees billboards for new cars and clothing stores along the highway as he drives to work. When Peter arrives at work, he goes online to check his email. He sees emails from different stores advertising sales. Finally, before starting his workday, Peter checks his Facebook and Instagram accounts, where he sees thoughts and ideas his friends have shared. Peter shows us that on a regular day, in just a short amount of time, people see and hear many messages through various types of media. I'm so sorry, we are just a little bit late here. So this is Peter, this is the guy I was talking about. So you saw his regular day and how much media he follows. So think about your own daily routine. How often do you see or hear media messages? What types of media do you see or listen to? Now, let's answer our second question, which is, where do we see and hear media messages? Media is everywhere. Finally, to answer our third question, which is, how often do we see and hear media messages? Well, we see and hear media messages constantly through various sources, including radio, television, billboards, the internet, and more. With all of the media that surrounds us, it is important that we learn how to understand and analyze the messages being sent. And this leads us to the topic of media literacy. Later, we will define media literacy and explain why it is important. Now, I'm going to talk about different types of media. There are many different types of media, and the term traditional media refers to any mass communication method that came before the invention of the internet and social media. One of the oldest types of traditional media is print media, and this includes newspapers, magazines, and billboards. As technology developed, so did the different types of media. For example, radio and television are fairly recent additions to traditional media. Now let's talk about social media a bit. Today, millions of people use social media such as Facebook or Twitter to spread their ideas and messages. Social media refers to any website or technologies that allow individual users to create and share information with a specific audience. Other examples of social media are Instagram, YouTube, and online discussion boards and forums. Now, let's talk about media consumption. As technology has grown, the ways in which we receive media messages have changed. We read text, but we also look at pictures, data, and charts. We watch videos, and we listen to the radio, podcasts, and other recordings. These days, we often say that we consume media, which can refer to any way that we take media messages in. And now, it's time to answer this very important question. What is media literacy? In the 21st century, people are flooded with messages. It doesn't matter if they get them online, on television, or in newspapers. Media literacy is about understanding how and why messages are being spread. It starts with asking the right questions. Who created this message? What words or images are used in this message, and why? How is this message supposed to make me feel? Media and information literacy is a complex concept proposed by UNESCO in 2007. According to them, media and information literacy constitutes a composite set of knowledge, skills, attitudes, competencies, and practices that allow effectively access, analyze, critically evaluate, interpret, use, create, and disseminate information and media products with the use of existing means and tools on a creative, legal, and ethical basis. It is an integral part of so-called 21st century skills. Why is media literacy important? Media literacy teaches you to think carefully about information. You learn to ask the right questions. Look at different points of view and make connections between new and old ideas. These questions aren't just important for watching television or checking a smartphone. Critical thinking helps you do well in other parts of life, such as in the classroom or at the office. 5 reasons to understand the media today are: you need 2 skills to be a citizen of a democracy: critical thinking and self-expression. Media literacy teaches both. You hear and see more media messages in one day than other people did in the past. So media literacy teaches you how to understand these messages. Media has a big effect on the way we understand and act. Media literacy helps you understand these influences, and it gives you the power to make better decisions. Images are becoming more and more important. Learning how to read these images is just as necessary as reading the text. Media literacy helps you understand where information comes from. It also helps you understand who it benefits and how to find other views. There are many things to think about when we see or hear media messages. These are 5 specific questions to help guide you. These questions are as follows: who created the message that is being sent? What techniques were used to attract my attention? How might other people understand or interpret this message differently from me? And what points of view and values are included or omitted from this message? The last question here is: why was this message sent? Now we will talk about media landscape. Before we explain more details related to media landscape, let's just briefly repeat. What is media? Well, it is all types of mass communication, internet, broadcast, publishing, regarded collectively. And what is media literacy? A skill set that promotes critical engagement with messages produced by the media. Now I would like to introduce 3 more very important words, and they are misinformation, which is incorrect or misleading information. Then we have disinformation, which is information that is false and deliberately created to harm a person, social group, organization, or country. And we have malinformation, which is genuine information that is shared to cause harm, often by moving information designed to stay private into the public sphere. Why it matters? Well, misinformation is all around us and it affects how we vote, the medical treatment we seek, and the opinions we form. Towards the end of the 2016 US presidential campaign, the most popular misinformation about the election got more engagement on Facebook than the top factual election stories by news organizations like the New York Times and Washington Post. Online misinformation is also a factor that increases the risk of epidemics from diseases preventable by vaccine. For these reasons, alongside a host of other commonly held misperceptions and misunderstandings, it is imperative that we equip news consumers with the skills to discern true from false information in the daily onslaught of content. This is a big part of what's commonly referred to as media literacy. Leading thinkers on misinformation have suggested that media literacy is a key plank of the solution to misinformation and must be pursued in earnest. It's very hard to correct misinformation. We saw that misinformation often gets more traction than the corrected information that comes later or after. This means it's all the more important for us to carefully judge what we read and view and avoid sharing something if it might be misinformation. It is important to realize that all of us are working against our natural instincts when we try to disengage from sensational information. Sensationalism works because human beings are drawn to it. That is why false stories travel faster than true ones. False, sensational stories work because they touch upon something we value and at the same time create fear. Fear turns off our ability to think critically. This is why it is important to coach yourself to recognize these emotions when they are triggered. Media overload is a documented phenomenon, and a lot of us feel overwhelmed by how much media we consume, how much media we are expected to keep up with, and how many devices we have, etc. It can be hard to unplug. However, there are documented negative effects, especially related to social media. For example, a recent study found that the more time young adults use social media, the more likely they are to be depressed. According to new research from the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine, being aware of certain habits and learning additional media literacy skills can help you navigate media more efficiently to find ways to help you avoid feeling totally overwhelmed. We must all take responsibility for the information we consume. Now, I would like to talk about something called name it to tame it. Well, news and media can make us feel a certain way. For example, we can be surprised, angry, confused, or sad. Taking a minute to identify your emotional reaction and to take a pause and a bit of distance from it can help you better understand the news and media you are seeing. Better understand your own views towards a topic and help you avoid falling for content that might not be true. We call this principle name it to tame it, borrowing a phrase from Dr. Dan Siegel, researcher or interpersonal neurobiology. The act of finding words to describe your emotions turns on the part of your brain that gives you mental control and the ability to regulate yourself. It is so-called the executive brain. This gives you the ability to choose how you respond to the thing that provoked the reaction. Pausing, taming your reaction, and activating the executive brain will help you determine the truth of the information, or at least stop you from sharing something that you are not sure is true. We are bombarded with information, and it can be difficult to tell truth from fiction. To be more critical consumers of news and media, it can be helpful to recognize and understand your own emotional reactions to various topics covered in the news. Using name it to tame it, observing and setting aside your strong emotional reactions can help you be a more critical and self-aware consumer of news and media. After that, it's critical to be careful about whether we share the information we come across. Keep in mind that you are the information gatekeepers, and false information travels faster and further than corrections. Therefore, take steps to think critically before you share information. And here on this slide, you can see something called the wheel of emotions. It is created by a psychologist, Robert Plutchik, and this emotion wheel describes 8 basic emotions: anger, anticipation, joy, trust, fear, surprise, sadness, and disgust. People can use the wheel to identify their emotions and come to terms to how they are feeling and ultimately become more self-aware and self-compassionate. Okay, let's move on. And let's talk about types of media content. Let's learn how to identify different ways of conveying information, including informing, propaganda, social advertising, public relations, and commercial advertising. This is important because we have to understand the aims an information creator has before we can judge the credibility of the information. And let's start with the analysis of this chart. First, we're going to talk about reporting. Reporting is definitely a form of information, and it uses mostly facts. The opinions are attributed to other speakers. They are not the opinion of the author. The purpose of reporting is to inform, and emotions or impressions or effects it elicits are curiosity, interest, and learning. It works through various mechanisms like description, depiction, and comparison. And its attitude towards its subject is neutral. Now we will focus on opinion. Well, opinion is a form of persuasion. The author expresses his or her opinion. Better opinion pieces are supported by facts. The purpose is to influence what you believe, and emotions here are fear, anger, and concern. It works through arguments, description, comparison, and appeal to emotion, and its attitude can be positive or negative. In terms of advertising, we can say that it is a form of persuasion as well, and it uses opinion that you should buy a product or service. The purpose is to influence what you buy, and the emotions are desire, joy, and concern again. It works through appeal to desires, appealing or arresting imagery or music. And definitely the attitude is positive. Social advertising is a form of persuasion. It uses opinion about how you should believe, and the purpose of this is to influence how you behave for the good of yourself and society. What emotions do we have here? Well, altruism, fear, and concern. It works through appeal to morality, sympathy, sense of responsibility, desire for self-improvement. It may borrow techniques from commercial advertising as well. And the attitudes here are positive, as in prevention, action to address a problem, or it can be negative when it is about the problem. Now let's focus on PR, or public relations. This is also a form of persuasion, and it uses opinion about the company in question. What is the purpose? Well, to influence how you think about a company. And definitely we have positive feelings towards that company. It works through appeal to positive emotions, association, and similar things. Its attitude is definitely positive. And the last thing here is propaganda, which is also a form of persuasion. It uses opinion, usually about politics, and the purpose of propaganda is to influence and compel your political views, your political choices, and similar things. So, what emotions do we have here? First, pride, feeling of being a part of something. Then anger, desire to act, hatred, fear, and horror. It works through insult, insinuation, exaggeration, destruction, use of authority figures, juggling with facts, manipulating with symbols and stereotypes, constant repetition. And its attitude towards its subjects can be positive or negative. Now let's sum up this chart. Information presents facts that are intended to educate people on a topic or topics. It may include some opinions about the facts, but opinions are clearly labeled and are not the main focus of the informative piece. For all types of persuasion, the purpose is to influence. Persuasive content also tends to appeal to emotions more than informing content does. Persuasion is a problem when its true nature is hidden. For example, if you notice a paid advertisement label on an article authored by Toyota or GE, you will probably keep in mind the company's motives when judging the piece. If it's not labeled as such, you might not be as skeptical as you should be. Also, keep in mind that even the highest quality opinion pieces don't give you the whole truth. The individual facts provided may be accurate, but the author will leave out most facts that disprove his main idea. That's why it is important to read a variety of opinions and to seek out purely factual pieces. Keep in mind that low-quality opinion pieces may contain information that is false. Okay? Before we move on with new selection, I will just briefly try to explain some new forms of media and changes in traditional media. I have a couple of questions you should think about. Do we get all our information today from journalism? Who follows journalism standards? Who even is a journalist? Let's talk about that right now. Technology innovation has accelerated greatly in the past few decades, and communication technology has been central to that revolution. Today, we get our journalism from a wide variety of sources, not just print, and print has far fewer readers than before. Today, anyone can publish. In some ways, we can all be journalists. You can record something happening near you and publish it for your friends and neighbors. It might even go viral, nationwide or worldwide, but the quality of information published online varies tremendously. Most of us don't have the time to verify information and report on context the way that journalists do, and most people who share information online have not committed to follow the journalistic standards. The news industry has suffered declining revenues for decades now, with big drops starting as the internet began to take off. The 2008 recession dragged revenues down further. With print subscriptions falling sharply, fewer people are seeing print ads, meaning newspapers have lost a lot of money. Online ads just don't bring in enough money to make up the shortfall, especially because news organizations compete with social media and other platforms for advertising. News outlets are left doing whatever they can to try to maximize their online content, getting as many people as possible to click through their stories. That's why clickbait, manipulative headlines that trade on your curiosity to get your clicks, became so widely used. The drop in revenue means newspapers have to shed a lot of jobs, and many have had to close. It becomes harder and harder for journalists to do their job and report on everything that ought to be covered. Dozens of local daily papers closed, merged, or were reduced to weeklies in just a dozen years. This might be near you as well. Local newspapers face the same economic pressures we outlined above, but they have been disproportionately affected by these pressures. The impact is fewer journalists to cover what's happening in your city, city hall, or state legislature, or to investigate the local issues that matter to you, like crime, schools, transportation, and the environment. Because of the lack of employment opportunities in smaller towns and the nation's interior, most journalists end up in big cities. ways of communicating have changed dramatically over the past couple of decades, and the news has changed along with it. Journalists are under tremendous pressure to report and write quickly and to get clicks for their articles. This is one of the reasons that headlines, even from credible sources, can provoke strong emotions. At the same time, it gets harder to tell who is and who isn't a journalist. Anyone has the capacity to publish online, but not everyone follows journalistic principles, which take time to learn and put into practice. And now, finally, the last section in this lecture is news selection. Here we are going to talk about the factors that influence what stories get covered and what stories you see, which are not necessarily the same thing. We'll talk about decisions reporters and editors make in the newsroom, as well as the influence of social media and the importance of the choices you make. There are a lot of complex factors that contribute to the type of news we see and what we recall seeing. And this story funnel actually explains how stories get to us. First, we have editorial decisions. There's a number of factors that go into editors' decision-making about what stories to cover. These include what readers want, what outlets think they have a responsibility to cover, what they have covered in the past, and what other outlets are covering. Next thing is called platform algorithms, or where we consume our news. Online and social media tools use algorithms in different ways to show us things we might like, which can reinforce certain trends and create filter bubbles. The common situation where we are only shown content that matches our point of view. When we consume broadcast or print news in their original formats, algorithms don't guide our choices, of course. The third part here, the third stage here, is consumption choices. What we actually consume. There are many choices on many platforms, and definitely there are many factors which influence our choices. And the last stage here is recall, or what sticks in our brain. Why do you remember what you actually do? How might that influence your news consumption habits? Now we are going to concentrate on how editorial decisions get made. We will see how newsrooms are structured. Well, newsrooms and media outlets have different departments, and some of those departments have firewalls between them. For example, the owners of an outlet and the editorial board of an outlet are separated so that the editorial board can express their opinions freely. Some departments at a media outlet include reporters who can have different beats or topics they cover, such as crime, sports, national politics, weather. They can have editorial writers who help to dictate the tone and content of a publication. They have social media departments, advertising, and owners of the outlet. Editors are responsible for what news is covered. But the question is, what factors go into editors' choices of what stories to cover. We have 9 factors of editorial decision making, and the first one is reader preference and expectation. Media outlets want to ensure that people consume and engage with their content. When that content is online, media outlets strive to have people click on and share their stories. Each publication has a certain audience in mind, and that audience expects certain things from the publication. So each outlet tries to fulfill its niche. People magazine might dedicate an entire issue to Paris Fashion Week, for example, while the Wall Street Journal might not even mention it. The next factor is civic duty. Journalists who cover important local, national, or world events often feel that they have a civic duty to inform readers. For this reason, major newspapers write about natural disasters, wars, famine, and other topics that qualify as bad news, even though they might not get as many clicks as some more light-hearted stories. The third factor is geography. Local papers emphasize what's happening in their city or area. They might have a small section devoted to national or global events, or they might not cover these at all, figuring that people will get that news from other sources. For example, US papers like USA Today and the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times cover events around the world, but devote by far the greatest part of their coverage to what is happening in the US. Next factor is rarity. Unusual events get more coverage than ordinary events. That old saying goes, man bites dog, and that will get more coverage than dog bites man. Understand? The fifth factor is impact or severity. An earthquake that kills 10,000 will get greater coverage than the one that kills 100. Next one is celebrity or power. If a well-known politician or a well-known actor does something, that's more likely to be covered than if your neighbor does the same thing. And we come to the seventh factor, which is competition. Oftentimes, if one outlet covers a story that promises to engage readers, others will follow suit. Sometimes outlets try to distinguish themselves with an original angle and approach to the story. But sometimes they just want to be seen covering what everyone is talking about and to get their share of the clicks. Next factor is exclusivity. On the other hand, if an outlet knows it has a story no one else has, it has a big incentive to run that story. And the last factor is timeliness. Events that happened recently are prioritized over things that happened days or weeks ago. That 24-hour news cycle moves quickly, and this can influence what journalists cover and how long they spend on a certain story. And just one short summary of this last topic. There are lots of complex and intersecting factors that contribute to the decisions that journalists and news outlets make regarding what types of news to cover and how to cover it. These factors also contribute to what we see and how we see it. Understanding how the factors intersect and influence news coverage can help us be more aware of what we are seeing and why. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope that you all enjoyed this lecture, this presentation about media literacy, news selection, and different types of media content. I believe that all the lovers of social studies, humanities, and the English language specifically have had the opportunity to enjoy. Thank you one more time for your attention, for your time, and I hope we will see soon. Goodbye.